Earth is a planet of extremes. Extreme places and extreme animals. But some animals are more extreme than others. Join us as we count down to find the most unusual and the most extraordinary on Animal Planet's The Most Extreme.
The next time someone tells you to eat your greens because they're good for you, remind them that a diet of leaves can be deadly. Plants don't want animals stealing their leaves, so trees defend themselves from attack by pumping their leaves full of bitter chemicals. And they certainly don't leave calories lying about unprotected in leaves for animals to steal. So if you want to live on nothing but leaves, you can either eat massive amounts to get enough energy to survive, or you eat less and use less energy. And nothing uses less energy than the sloth. The sloth kicks off our countdown of extreme eaters because it eats nothing but leaves from the forests of Central and South America. It's an extremely low-energy diet, but then the sloth doesn't need much energy to survive. A sloth has half as many muscles as most creatures its size. Why waste energy on muscles when you spend most of the day just hanging upside down from your fingernails? A sloth doesn't waste energy looking for food either. It only eats leaves from a very small number of tree species, which makes it a very fussy eater. Thanks to its extreme diet, the sloth is undoubtedly the laziest eater in the countdown. In the jungles of South America, our next contender may not be as agile as a gecko, but this is one daredevil that spends its life upside down, hanging by its fingernails. Coming in at number 9 in the countdown is the sloth. Hanging around in trees may look easy, but there's a reason why human torturers used to suspend their victims upside down. Unlike a sloth, our body isn't used to pumping blood down to the head. That's why if you stay inverted for too long, you get extreme pain, hemorrhages, and even fatal aneurysms. But the sloth takes it all in its stride. Its very slow stride. We may think it's extreme, but for a sloth, living upside down is perfectly normal. Its internal organs are all permanently inverted. In fact, it's so good at hanging on to a tightrope that it can no longer walk erect on the ground. And that can be a bit of a problem, because sometimes the vines and creepers of the jungle are not as well designed as the sloth. Luckily, the sloth is an excellent swimmer. The sloth is number 9 in the countdown because it's not easy being a daredevil when your world keeps crashing down around your ears. For the sloth, falling off the high wire isn't a problem. It's having to climb all the way back up again that can prove to be difficult for the slowest daredevil in the countdown. Travel to South America and you'll discover that the next contender in our countdown of extreme oddities can be found in some very strange places. Settling in to number 8 in the countdown is an animal that holds more records for being strange than for freestyle swimming. It may look ungainly, but believe it or not, this is the fastest you'll ever travel if you're a sloth. Its thick fur gives it buoyancy, so it can swim surprisingly well, which comes in handy if you live in the seasonally flooded forests of the Amazon. The sloth is number 8 in the countdown because when it's back in the trees, it does everything upside down. It eats, sleeps, and even mates upside down. And that's why it's such an odd-looking animal. The sloth's topsy-turvy lifestyle means that everything in its body, from its internal organs to its fur, grow upside down compared to other mammals. Even its hair is strange because it has special grooves to encourage the growth of algae. Having a garden of microscopic plants growing in your fur is a great way to get free camouflage. But sloth fur is home to more than just plants. There can be more than 100 moths living in a sloth's fur coat. These sloth moths hitch a ride on their slow-moving carpet because they lay their eggs in a very odd place. Once a week, a sloth descends to the ground to defecate. This is the moment the female moths have been waiting for, because sloth dung is home sweet home for their babies. Moths fight to lay their eggs before their mobile home disappears up in the trees. Luckily, sloth moths don't make such a mess when they fight over their strange breeding ground. Although, given the sloth's standards of personal hygiene, it's unlikely this odd animal would ever notice if its fur was covered in a tiny trail of dung-covered footprints. The forests of Central and South America are home to a cleaner that's so lazy, it's named after one of the 7 deadly sins. Meet the sloth. It's numbered 10 in the countdown because it's the world's least efficient cleaner. Scientists have observed that after a particularly long sleep of, say, 18 hours, it might wake up and have a bit of a scratch, often for less than a minute. No wonder it has the world's dirtiest fur. In the dry season, its shaggy outer coat is brown, but when the rains come, single-celled algae start growing in tiny grooves along each hair and turn its fur green. And since the fur is seldom cleaned, it's home to all kinds of other creatures. One scientist discovered more than 980 scarab beetles on a single sloth. Another individual carried more than 120 moths, which all had a disturbing interest in the sloth's bathroom habits. Once a week, the sloth goes to the toilet. The moths are interested in the droppings because they're great food for their babies. Riding on the sloth means that the female moths are ready to fly into action when their host finally goes about its business. However, there's a good reason why the sloth is the least fastidious cleaner in the countdown. When you move this slowly, your best method of avoiding predators is to become invisible, and turning your fur green is certainly excellent camouflage. One scientist has even suggested that the algae in the fur may provide nutrition or a particular trace element, since sloths without algae don't survive long in captivity. During the rainy season, the rising rivers flood the forest. This is the time when a sloth goes for a swim, whether it wants to or not. Luckily, the sloth is a surprisingly good swimmer and moves faster in the water than it ever could on land. However, a quick dip in the river does little to change the sloth's appalling personal hygiene. The modern descendant of the most extreme, awesome ancestor in the countdown can be found hanging around in the forests of the Amazon. It's the sloth. It usually weighs about 10 pounds, and 2/3 of that can be the contents of its stomach. The leaves it eats provide very little nutrition and don't digest easily, so it uses a very large, specialized, slow-acting stomach to break down the tough vegetation. The digestive process can take more than a month to complete. That's why the sloth only needs to make its way down to the forest floor once a week to go to the toilet. It's very particular about its bathroom habits, just like its awesome ancestor that once went to the toilet in this cave in Nevada. This poo is 11,000 years old and was deposited by an ancient herbivore that was big, very big. The super pooper was the giant ground sloth. It stood nearly 20 feet tall and weighed as much as a mammoth. It's number 1 in the countdown because it was 750 times bigger than its descendant hanging from trees today. While both sloths use their claws to hang onto branches, the giant ground sloth could use its 20-inch claws to rip trees in half. By analyzing DNA samples taken from giant ground sloth dung, scientists have confirmed that it's most closely related to the South American three-toed sloth.